Hello students, today we're in chapter 16 learning about fiscal policy. So fiscal policy is not the same as monetary policy. A lot of my students conflate them, but they are distinct. So fiscal policy refers to changes in government spending and taxes. Monetary policy we saw earlier, that was about the money supply and interest rates, so it's different. Now there's a parallel, and just as there is expansionary monetary policy, there's also expansionary fiscal policy, and same for contractionary. Fiscal policy also has some shortcomings, which we'll talk about as well. And then there is supply side fiscal policy. Now our book just stops there, but I also thought we should talk about the debt as well. So I'll have an extra section about that. So let's start with expansionary fiscal policy. So expansionary fiscal policy means the government spending is going to rise and or taxes go down. So either one of those are going to have the same effect on our ASAD model. So we draw our diagram. So here we have price and real GDP. And if government spending goes up, that's going to cause aggregate demand to shift out. So aggregate demand, we just know, is total demand. So now that the government is demanding more stuff, there's more demand overall in the economy. Similarly, if taxes go down, that's going to mean that people have more money to spend, and people have more money to spend, they spend more, and if people spend more, there's more aggregate demand. So now let's put it together with the rest of our ASD model, because we also have the SRAS curve and the LRAS curve. So in the short run, 80 shifts out for the reasons that we just talked about. So that's going to take us from Y star and unemployment rate U star, and this is P star, out here to Y1 and P1. Same notation as before. We're not in lower equilibrium. We're not on our LRS curve, so that means these ones do not get a star. So when we're above the LRS curve out here, that means the economy is doing well, which means less unemployment. So U is going to be less than U star. So our short run effects are we have higher prices, P1 is above P star, higher real GDP, and lower unemployment. So U was originally at U star, now it's below U star. So that's the short run. Now let's look at the long run. So as usual, the SRS curve is the one that brings us back into equilibrium. So here we can see that prices have gone up in the short run. So what workers do in response is they're going to ask for raises. So if things got 5% more expensive, you're going to want to get 5% more money at your job. And that's going to mean higher costs for the firms. And firms respond to higher costs by slashing production. So some products that have been break even are now unprofitable, so you don't want to make them anymore. And firms produce less, SRES shifts back. So in the long run, prices are going to rise again. And GDP and unemployment are to return to their original levels. So to summarize, what is going on here is that expansionary fiscal policy gives you a temporary boost, higher GDP, lower unemployment, but also gives you inflation. That's what happens if you start at equilibrium. But many times, though, the motivation for expansionary fiscal policy and also for expansionary monetary policy is when the economy is not in equilibrium. So let's draw a case like that. So we saw back in chapter 15, there are a couple of big spikes in government outlays during the Great Recession and also during the COVID recession. So that'd be a point like this one over here, where you are below your LRAS curve. So call it Y0. So since we are below our LRS curve, that means higher unemployment. So U is going to be greater than U star. So we use expansionary fiscal policy to try to fight the recession. That's going to boost aggregate demand. And if you design the policy just right, you can get back to equilibrium. Now, one other cost of expansionary fiscal policy is, we already saw there is inflation back over here. Another cost is that you get a budget deficit. So if you start spending more or taxing less or both, either way, you're going to typically put more strain on your budget. So during recessions, we sometimes debate that while the policy can help us end the recession faster, is it worth it when you're going to add more debt? And there are other drawbacks as well, which we'll talk about in another section. So that wraps up expansionary fiscal policy. Next, we'll look at contractionary. Now, to be clear though, the diagram for expansionary monetary policy is going to look the same, but that does not mean that monetary policy and fiscal policy are the same. They are different. Fiscal policy, once again, is about taxes and spending. Monetary policy is about the money supply and interest rates.